Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of The Grueling Truth. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Today we have a very special guest. Played 11 years in the NFL as a quarterback, also currently an author, wrote a very good book that I highly recommend, Facing the Blitz. Help me welcome to The Grueling Truth, Jeff Kemp. How you doing tonight, Jeff?
I'm good. How are you, Mike?
All right. So we said you wrote a book called Facing the Blitz. I think it came out, middle to end of last year. What drove you to write the book, and how did you come up with the name?
I spent my life since football working on families. How do you strengthen relationships so families stay together, so kids get the benefit of their mom and dad? And pretty much everyone wants to be loved and belong and connect, and family is central to that, but unfortunately it's a source of pain and joy. So in that regard, I've been out there with people, and I see that there's tough things that happen to folks, and they don't always have a game plan or a strategy or even hope on how to handle a tough thing in life. There's relationship problems, there's illnesses, there's cancer, you lose a loved one. Sometimes people will even lose their child to an illness. There are divorces. The economy goes south, people lose their savings. How do you handle the tough stuff in life, and how do you get back on track to have solid relationships and a solid marriage, solid family? So those are the questions I wanted to address. And coming from the world of football, I used to look forward to blitzes because the blitz wasn't just a play where I might end up on my back with 5 guys attacking us, but it was also a play with no free safety, man-to-man coverage, and a great chance at scoring a touchdown. So it was just a dangerous opportunity. And I think people could learn so much more about handle the tough things in life for good. And so that's why I wrote the book, 3 Strategies for Turning Trials into Triumphs. How to turn the bad into good, how to have the right long-term attitude and willingness to change and focus on others rather than selfishness. Okay. Now, what kind of blitzes did you face in your own career? Or, just 1 or 2 instances that come to mind. Obviously, there were blitzes. I know there's probably a lot more than that over 11 years, but yeah, no. I started off as a free agent. I wasn't supposed to make it in the league. I started off as 4th string. I went to second, first, back to second. They brought another quarterback in after I led the Rams to the playoffs. They traded me to the Niners. I got to play when Joe Montana was hurt. Then I got hurt, and they brought in a guy named Steve Young, thought he'd be better than me for the future. I guess that turned out okay for them, but I was upset at the time. They traded me to Seattle. I sat on the bench a long time in Seattle. I finally had a good year in 91, but we lost a game on Sunday night. They cut me that next day, lost my job middle of the year. Wound up in Philadelphia, had a great year for them, and then got cut next summer and didn't want to finish my career. I got kicked out of the league faster than I wanted. Some of those things were painful, but the toughest things in life was when my dad got melanoma cancer, and we lost him over about a 4-month period back in 2009. I ran a nonprofit, and about 6 years ago, when the economy went south in 2008-9, I had to let a bunch of people go that worked for us, including myself. I fired myself so that the budget would become lean, and the young man that I'd been grooming to lead us could take over and not have a lot of budget on hand. And today the organization is doing great, but it was a painful period when I had to let staff go, fire myself, not know what the future held. Those types of blitzes have turned out for good, even though they were painful in the moment. And I tell stories in the book about my blitzes in football, my blitzes in my career, and then my blitzes in family and these issues. But there's bigger blitzes in the story, in the book. People that lost a child to cancer, people that lost a child to a drunk driver, people that saw their wife die of brain cancer, people that lost, their whole career and job, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that everybody faces blitzes in life, and I think a lot of times the big problem is everybody only looks at the bad things that have happened in their life, and they don't look at the good, and they get kind of swamped and overwhelmed by the bad and think only this happens to them, but it doesn't really. And I know in your book you touched on a lot of situations such as that. So you talk crisis and opportunities. Tell us a little bit about Leslie, the server you met in Washington, her story of loss and how God turned it in an opportunity for the good.
Yeah, I met Leslie. I was at a restaurant down in Gig Harbor, Washington, and our server came up, and we got a relationship going and talked to her afterwards. And Leslie told me about the foundation that she was involved in, which was helping soldiers and their families deal with PTSD and prevent suicide and kind of the terrible array of problems that come with double, triple deployments and the PTSD issues. And I said, well, how'd you get involved in this? And, a tear comes to her eye, and she tells me that back when she was a single mom and the pride of her life was her 20-something-year-old son, Kyle, he came back from deployments in Iraq and complications and a messed up life from PTSD, lost his life here in America. So she loses her son. She went into a funk, into depression, and started trying to climb out of it, but it was difficult. And it really wasn't until someone invited her to go chaperone a kind of a mission trip for youth to New Orleans. They were going to help people who were victims of Katrina, and they needed this gal's help to chaperone the teenagers. And the person who invited her didn't even know that she was going through the terrible loss of her son and she was in depression. But when Leslie went to New Orleans with these kids and started hanging out with them, encouraging them, and then seeing the people that they were serving in New Orleans, the spark came alive inside of her again. And she started to heal from her loss, and she started to realize that she could use her loss and the experience that her family had had with PTSD to help other soldiers and their families prevent that terrible pain that had taken the life of her son. And so she started a foundation, Permission to Dream Again, and she has been running fundraisers and banquets and breakfasts and putting money into military families to protect their the soldiers from PTSD, and she totally turned around. So in serving others, she healed from her blitz, and she got a vision for the rest of her life that has energized her. So of course she misses her son, but their joy is returned and purpose is returned. That's the way to face a blitz, with a long-term view, a willingness to grow and adapt, and probably most importantly, a focus on blessing others. That'll move you through your trials faster.
Now, if you've got somebody whose dreams have been, basically crushed by a blitz in life, how do you go about personally coaching them through that experience?
First, it's a kind of an approach of just presence and comfort. Sometimes you don't want to have a lot of words when someone's in a really tough spot, but you do want to be with them. A lot of people are awkward and they stay away from someone when they're in a tough spot. Their child has just died. They're facing cancer. They lost their job. You know what? Just wade in and be with them. Ask them if you can take them out for coffee or sit with them at a meal, watch a movie with them. Sit there and be available. And when they need to open up to you, they will. The second thing to do is say, my problems aren't anything like yours, but I can kind of remember back when I went through this really messed up time. And then tell your stories of pain and difficulty. Tell your blitz stories. Show them that you've come through them, that there's a long-term perspective, that there's hope. And I think then you start encouraging them that in the midst of this pain, if you can reach out and just give some encouragement to someone else who's struggling during this time, you'll start healing from your blitz even faster. That doesn't mean buck up and be happy. It means look around and see that, even the cab driver might be going through something tough, and you could ask him how his day is and thank him for their attention. You could focus on encouraging your son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter, someone at work who's in trouble. I remember when I was at training camp with the Eagles in '92, and training camp was going terribly. I wasn't getting any reps, didn't look like I'd make the team. I was really pretty frustrated. I was complaining to my wife on the phone each night. She was in Seattle, and I was in Philadelphia. I was homesick. And Stacy said, Jeff, you just seem like you're so focused on your negative circumstances. I think it's bringing you down. Maybe you could just look for someone at training camp, some player who's also struggling, and why don't you make it your goal to encourage them? And so I did. I found a rookie that was really, depressed, not doing well, feeling alone and homesick, and I just started, sitting with him at lunch, taking him to dinner, patting him on the back, encouraging him, praying for him. And it really turned my attitude around. And the funny thing is he made the team and I got cut. So it didn't fix my ultimate circumstances, but it did recalibrate my attitude, which is really where our life is lived, by our attitude.
Yeah, it helped you help somebody else out, maybe.
By helping someone else out, I helped myself. But many times you need a friend to kind of paint that picture and encourage you to do that. Not to say, man, what you're going through isn't that bad. Other people have been through that before. You don't say anything stupid like that. You validate their emotions. You say, I can't imagine how hard this is, and I really empathize with you. But I want to encourage you to open your eyes a little bigger and look around. Just find someone you can encourage today. See if you can't find someone that you can be a positive impact on. That helps that person start turning the corner to recovering from and actually turning their blitz into a blessing of sorts in other people's lives.
Now, what role does forgiveness play when a tragedy blitzes you? I know you had a story about your friends, Steve and Tricia Woodworth.
Yeah.
Their story of forgiveness.
Steve and Tricia faced a blitz, a hard one for you and me to imagine. Some people in our audience have been through some of this stuff. They had a son who had been struggling with a bunch of things, including some alcohol, and he kind of gotten cleaned up at a rehab thing, came back, and got together with a friend, and the friend was drinking and talked their son into giving him his car to drive. And their son jumped in the car with this kid that had been drinking, and the kid drove the car at high speed off the road, hit a tree, and killed them both. And Steve and Tricia get the message that this, supposed friend of their son has just killed their son, and they both died. Imagine how you'd feel toward that kid when your son was trying not to drive and didn't want to do it. In fact, what happened was Tricia reached out to the mother of that friend of their son, and I'm sure she was worried what they thought about her, since it was her son that had led to the accident that killed them both. But Tricia reached out in comfort, kindness, tried to make her life better, and they built a friendship through their pain. And obviously she forgave their son for what he'd done. And today, that woman and Tricia are best friends, and Steve and Tricia, who lost their son, have had the benefit of not holding on to the bitterness of unforgiveness. And really, so many of us in this world are stuck with not forgiving people. And, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. When you won't forgive someone, when you stay bitter, when you stay angry, when you hold on to that offense, you're really screwing your own life up. You're messing up your insides. You're not necessarily punishing them nearly as much as yourself. Forgiveness is the greatest path to healing.
So suppose I get tackled by one of life's blitzes that causes me to question the meaning and purpose of life. How would you talk me through the loss of my dream without me necessarily losing myself?
Well, sometimes we lose a job that means we're not going to get to keep going in that career direction. Maybe someone doesn't get into medical school. A relationship breaks up, and the person that you were almost worshiping, you're now not going to get to marry. Sometimes our dreams are not the very best things for us. Sometimes our dream had to do with making a whole lot of money, or being famous, or having some sort of luxury life. And when negative things happen that cancel that dream, we need to remember, you know what? I can gain a bigger and better vision for my life that has more to do with the things that count ultimately, which is relationships, love, family, togetherness. So I'd encourage you, you know what? If you're really broken up by the loss of a dream, maybe you were holding on to that dream so tightly that it was damaging your character and the relationships in your life. Maybe you were intended to have faith in God and not in your dream. And losing that dream might be the difficult thing that drives you closer to a relationship with God. So I'd encourage someone who's gone through a really tough blow that seemed like it shattered a particular dream of theirs to say, you know what, maybe there's a better vision for my life that's more focused on character and relationships and making a difference in other people's lives rather than what kind of financial or lifestyle gain will I get out of life.
Now, in 1991, you were playing for the Seattle Seahawks. Your team lost an important game to the Kansas City Chiefs. What caused you to take a deep, honest look at yourself and your response to that loss?
Well, I think we'd lost the game to the Broncos the week before, and then this is the second week in a row we lost, and it was a really bitter one. And in the interviews afterwards, I tried to play the optimist and say, hey, we're going to do better next week. Let's just talk about that. And I really didn't dwell on my mistakes or failure to perform or take the blame too much. And one of the defensive players, a friend of mine, Eugene Robinson, came to me and told me that some of the defensive guys on the team and coaches were wondering whether I was a stand-up guy. It was seeming to them like I'd shirked responsibility, that I wouldn't take the blame. The quarterback's at the center of things. And, boy, that hurt me, that I was being questioned in my character. And so I went into one of the coaches he was talking about, and I said, no, I do care. I do know that I messed up. I know I didn't play well. It's my responsibility. I was just being overly future-oriented and focused. But as I look back on that, I really realized that a large part of why I focused so much on optimism in the future was because I didn't want to feel bad about myself. And I really didn't take the blame. And that I had shirked that responsibility. And that if I'd taken it fully, people would have defended me rather than accused me. And I would have been more ready to learn from it and go forward. So the message from that experience is, don't be afraid to accept and take the responsibility. I mean, you may think, I only did 10% or 20% of what led to this problem in our marriage or this problem at work. Take that as if that's the whole problem. Learn your lesson completely. Don't try to defend yourself or hide from it. The sooner you do, the more you'll grow, and the sooner you'll move on to better chapters. But if we shirk responsibility, if we try to spin, cover, defend ourselves, we're going to mess up relationships, and our character will be weak, and we won't have the good future that we're intended to have. All of us mess up. Just accept the blame.
Yeah, and, I mean, I don't know about you, but myself, I'd rather it be my fault than somebody else's anyways. And I've got a teenage daughter. Well, she's in her early 20s now. Anytime something goes wrong, that's the first thing that comes out of her mouth, wasn't my fault. You want to talk a little bit about, the importance of taking responsibility for your actions and how that affects your relationships with others, more importantly?
Yeah, here's a delicate but intense story that'll illustrate this. I was teaching this class to husbands about marriage, and we got into the topic of forgiveness and apology and responsibility. And this guy told me, hey, my friend went through a really intense experience. He was a good guy, pretty good husband, great dad, Boy Scout leader, coach in sports, faithful to his wife. And he comes home one night and finds his wife in an affair, literally with a friend of his. And after the shock and awe and the brutality of that initially passed, this man did something incredibly rare, and it actually paid off very, very well for him. He pulled away from the situation. He didn't think about how heinous and wrong what his wife did was, as much as he said, what could I have possibly done or not done to let my wife fall out of love with me to where she'd fall into bed with this guy? And in thinking about it, he realized he'd gotten so busy with all these good activities that he'd failed to choose the best activity, which is to prioritize, to cherish, to date, to talk to nurture, and love his wife. And he didn't excuse at all what she did. It was wrong. But he went to her first, and he said, I've been thinking, and I realized I've been so busy with work and the kids and Little League and stuff that I really haven't been paying attention to you well enough. I want to apologize for setting up the conditions in which you'd lean away from falling in love with me. He didn't excuse her affair. But the fascinating thing is, it melted her heart. She confessed how wrong it was, how she didn't want to be in that spot, how she wanted to rebuild their marriage, and they did rebuild their marriage because the man had the guts to look at himself and take responsibility for his part rather than the other. In saying this, I don't want any woman or guy out there to think, I did things that caused my spouse to have an affair. It's my fault. I'm not saying that. You're not excusing what the other person did. But if we always start with the log in our eye, even if it seems small, we have a much better chance of changing things because you can't change other people. You can only change yourself. And our apology, our taking responsibility is one of the biggest things. And I'd say to dads, hey, if you want to be a leader in your home, men, if you want to be a leader in your marriage, it's not bossing and commanding like some football coach or general. It's setting a tone of being the first one to apologize, the first one to take responsibility. If you do that, your teenager is a lot more likely to say, yeah, I was wrong. I stayed out an hour and a half longer and I told you and I didn't tell you about it. I'm sorry. But you got to apologize for the part that you play in things, especially in marriage.
All right, in Chapter 5, another thing I really like, because I've done work with Special Olympics when I coach professional indoor football, was the chapter opens with the story about the Special Olympics at UCLA and a person who is known as a hugger. What is a hugger, and why is their role important in Special Olympics?
So I was at UCLA doing Special Olympics back when I was on the Rams, and I was one of the 8 people assigned to stand at the end of the 100-yard dash and welcome the athletes as they finished crossing the finish line. And every one of the athletes, whether they came in first or last place, had a person there designated to hug them, cheer for them, congratulate them, tell them they looked great, way to go, I'm so proud of you, you looked phenomenal, and give them this great big hug. And what it illustrates is there was an unconditional, relationship-based value system being expressed at the Special Olympics. They gave a gold medal to the person who did first, and that's the conditional performance-based value system that you and I have at work, and you see it in the NFL, and it's on Wall Street and Madison Avenue. We all feel it in junior high. If we got pimples and are awkward, kids are making fun of us. If we're the coolest-looking kid or girl, we get all the attention, you know. If you get straight A's, people say great things to you. If you don't, they're negative. That's the conditional performance basis of this world. They reject you if you're not performing. Special Olympics is very different. Unconditional relationship-based value system. Everyone is valuable. Everyone deserves a relationship. Everyone deserves honor. We're going to hug everyone. And that attitude is so needed in this world. And I would just be encouraging our listeners, you know what? Why don't you be the one who gives a hug to someone who didn't, quote, deserve it? Why don't you be the one who says, you know, I believe in you, to someone who just failed? Why don't you be the one that says, you know, I love what I see on the inside of you, even though right now their face is filled with acne and they're not thinking they're very handsome or beautiful. You be the one that taps into their inner character and praises them, says, you matter to me. I really love you. You're awesome. Be a hugger. That's needed in our marriages. You know, you got to love your wife on the days when she's not looking like she did on the wedding day. And, boy, there's a lot of days where our wives need to hug us, and we're not acting like the prince that we should be to her. But you get much better response from people when you bring an unconditional relationship, that value system to them.
Now, you talk a little bit about the performance-based as opposed to relationally, I just said that wrong, based value system. How have you seen this played out in your own family?
It's funny. We have this little plate called the special plate. You are special. And I remember the night I got cut from the Seahawks mid-season as a starter. And my wife put the special plate out at the table in front of me. And the family goes around and says things that they love about that person who has the special plate in front of them. And obviously I hadn't earned it through my football career that night, but my wife was reinvesting in me by putting the plate there, and the boys would go around the table and say, I love Daddy because he plays with me. I love Daddy because he's a good football player. Funny thing was one of the boys said, be quiet, he just got cut. But we've used that plate multiple times, not because people deserved it, but because they needed to hear positive things from others in the family about them. That's an example of the unconditional relationship-based value system. Here's another one. There's a guy named Terry. His marriage breaks up. He's the one that wanted to save the marriage, though he knows he played a role in letting the two of them drift apart. But his wife doesn't want to save the marriage, and she goes forward with the divorce and treats him pretty negatively. And a couple months after the divorce, he's in his house and gets a call from his ex-wife, and she says, my car broke down. I can't get to work. I'm in a panic. What am I going to do? Can you help me? And he says, sure, I'll be right over. He brings his car over, gives it to her, says, go ahead, take it, use it for the day. He takes her car and gets it fixed at his price on his own, out of his own wallet, and redelivers it to her when it's fixed. And his daughter says to him later on at the dinner table, Dad, she's been so mean to you lately. How could you treat her like that? And Terry says, you know what? God loves me unconditionally, and he encourages me to love other people unconditionally. And that's truly what love is. It's doing what's best for someone else at a price to yourself, regardless of how they're behaving. That guy demonstrated the unconditional relationship-based value system versus the performance conditional value system. And he sent a great message to his daughter at the same time, didn't he? She saw what a real man is all about, even in rotten circumstances.
Yeah, most definitely. Tell us a little about Ruben Rodriguez, young punter for the Seattle Seahawks. What happened during a bad game performance-wise, and what approaches did you see in valuing people?
Ruben was a rookie on the Seahawks, big, tall, strong guy, but there's a lot of pressure in the NFL, and as a rookie you feel it. Key punting situation. And Ruben shanked one. It went off the side of his foot. I don't know if you've seen this before, but the ball literally went out of bounds for a 0-yard punt. It was brutal. And the special teams coach and a bunch of other coaches were all screaming and yelling at him. And the special teams coach in particular was just livid. It was kind of a reflection on him that this guy had messed up. And so he's cussing him out, and Ruben comes off and, tail between the legs, standing all by himself on the bench. No one's standing next to him. And I walked up next to him thinking, gosh, I know Ruben. I want Ruben to get through this tough thing. He's got to punt again. I hope he's not, melted down and panics the next time. So I'm going to encourage him. So I kind of patted him on the back and stood next to him. I was the only guy there. And I said, hey, man, don't worry, Ruben. You'll get the next one. It's okay. And the special teams coach heard me say it's okay, and he turned around and started cussing me out. Said, it is not okay. Bleepity, bleep, bleep, bleep. And I became the object of the wrath of this coach. But I just remember that all that cussing wasn't going to do anything constructive whatsoever to help Ruben Rodriguez punt a good kick. In fact, it might tear him down and make him worse. So there are positive ways to motivate, and there are negative ways. I heard about a Little League coach who was being so tough on his kids that one of the co-coaches' son wanted to quit the baseball team. Mid-season, they're about 5-5 as a team, and no one's having fun. And this kid wants to quit, and his dad says, "No, don't quit. Let me talk to the head coach, and we'll see what we can do." And this guy who had an Air Force background, was a great leader, goes up to the head coach, and says, "You know a lot about baseball, and I know a little bit about leadership. What if you focus on the X's and O's of baseball, and let me focus a little bit on motivation? I think we've been too negative. We need to become positive with these kids. How about if we do this? How about if we put a shin guard on every coach on his right shin? And we tell the kids that if we say anything negative or we glare at them or cuss ever, they can come up and kick us in the right shin as hard as they want." And he actually had the kids do this little exercise where they practiced kicking the coaches, and they just tapped him at first. And the coach said, "No, that's no good. Kick it hard." And they kicked it hard, and the kids laughed. And then they committed from that point forward that they would be positive the rest of the year, and they didn't ever have to get kicked. And the interesting thing is the team that was 500, 5 wins, 5 losses, didn't lose another game. And they had more kids on the All-Star team than any other team. And the kids weren't nervous at the plate anymore. They weren't afraid to strike out. They were excited because the coaches were positive. It makes a huge difference in life.
Yeah, and no matter what you're doing, if you're having fun doing it, you're going to be that much better at it also.
Yeah.
But
right on.
You devoted an entire chapter encouraging your audience to be investors, not consumers. What are the major differences or contrasts between an investor and a consumer, and how have you seen that played out in your own career?
Okay, let's use the monetary meaning of investor and consumer. A consumer takes his money and he spends it to get something, and the money's all gone after he spends it. Sometimes the thing that he bought is gone too. You watch the movie and it's over, okay? You buy the car, and 6 years later, it's not running as well, and you don't like it that much, and you want a different one. An investor takes her money, puts it in an enterprise that is deferring present enjoyment, but it grows the value so you have more to enjoy down the road. That investment may even provide jobs for a lot of people. It may even buy new capital equipment. So you get the idea. Investing is doing what adds value and grows it for the future. Consuming is taking for the moment, and there's not much left for the future, if any. Now let's flip that around and let's take a look at the NFL. In the summer, a quarterback coach is talking to his quarterbacks, and he's telling Russell Wilson and the Seahawks quarterbacks, hey, your responsibility is to throw the football to a 1-foot diameter of accuracy in front of the receiver, not behind him, above him, below him. Make it easy for him to catch, easy for him to keep running, protect him from the DBs. You serve that receiver to make him look good, make him succeed. Hold yourself accountable to a 1-foot standard of accuracy. But it's interesting that in the wide receiver meeting room, the coaches are telling them, hey, guys, if you can touch it, you must what?
Catch it.
Catch it, wherever it is. High, low, dive, get your ribs blown up. You make the quarterback and the team look good. You hold yourself to the highest standard of sacrificing to invest in the quarterback to make that pass to completion at a cost to yourself. That is an investor mentality. You're sacrificing of yourself, holding yourself to a high standard to make someone else look good so they can shine, so the team can shine, so you can all win. And there's a benefit for everyone in the long run, right? Super Bowl rings come from those sorts of investments. But in an American society that's all about consumption and all about advertising and all about saying you're the consumer, you're number one, you should get what you want, you should get when you want, how you want. Oh, by the way, don't be satisfied with what you have today. Trade it in for something new. If you told the wide receivers the quarterbacks are supposed to throw perfect passes, 1-foot diameter of accuracy, and they go across the middle on 3rd and 8 with a strong safety chasing and a free safety approaching them, and they think, if I slow down and reach back to catch this high pass, I'm going to get my ribs blown up, I'm going to get squashed, this might hurt. And I'm supposed to get perfect passes because I'm special, I'm the wide receiver. The quarterback's supposed to throw it to me to a 1-foot diameter of accuracy. What's the guy going to do? He's going to bat that pass down or ignore it and wait for a good one. What happens is no first down, no touchdown, no win, no Super Bowl, and no success for anyone. So you just converted that.
And he'll blame it on the quarterback.
Yeah. Well, you just converted him from an investor to a consumer.
Yeah.
And so that's the football analogy. But now, how about me? In my marriage, driving home tonight, am I thinking, what do I want my wife to do for me? Make a great dinner, leave me alone so I can watch ESPN, and then be romantic with me at 10 p.m.? I'm totally thinking like a consumer. Whereas an investor would think, I wonder what her day was like. Oh, yeah, she was meeting with those young women today. I'm going to ask her how that meeting went. Oh, and she had to do these 3 errands. How'd they go? And I wonder what happened at her job today. I'm going to see how she's doing. Does she need any help with dinner, clearing the plates? I'm going to engage her in conversation. I might click off ESPN, fold up USA Today, say, hey, babe, you want to sit down and talk for a half hour? I'm an investor all of a sudden. And frankly, my odds of having a romantic evening have just gone up dramatically because I put aside my consumer mode and I jumped into the investor mode. But I didn't get it to do it to get something. I did it because I love and I understand that relationships do best when I act like an investor, not a consumer.
Yeah. Now, in your book, you also talk a lot about teamwork. It's a big theme of the book, building relationships, helping one another, improving your life. What are some life lessons you've learned in a locker room that help you build trust in relationships closest to you?
So many things. Gosh, Bill Walsh used to teach how to run a play in a unique way to his whole team. Bill Walsh is a former Super Bowl coach. He's in the Hall of Fame of the 49ers. He passed away, but he was my coach along with Mike Holmgren. And when he put in the play Brown Right, Fake 22, actually it was called Brown Right, Fox 2 Z Post. It's a fake play action pass, so you're faking the run, and you're going to throw a deep post route. Most teams would teach that play to the linemen separately, running backs separately, quarterback separately, wide receivers separately. Then you'd go on the field and try to put it in. Bill would call the whole team together, and he'd say, hey, guys, we're going to put in Brown Right, Fox 2 Z Post today. But I want to remind you why we're running this play. we're running this play so we can develop an excellence of skill that helps us win more and more games so we can go to the playoffs and win the Super Bowl and become the dominant team of the league. And if we put excellence into how we prepare and practice this play and we execute it exactly as it should be, then we'll be leading ourselves one step closer to a Super Bowl. See how he cast the big vision? And then, after he got us tied to the big vision, he said, okay, linemen, do a cut block, dive to the left, sacrifice yourself, get your finger stepped on, your head smashed by their knees. Roger Craig, you run to the line of scrimmage with an imaginary football, wrap up with that imaginary football, there's nothing in your arms, run through the line of scrimmage. If you have to dive to make them think you got the ball, you're going to get smashed in the head, don't protect yourself. You're sacrificing to make it look like a run so that the team can work. Quarterback, turn your back to the defense, put the ball in, pull it out, fake, hide it on your hip, set up the pass at 2.2 seconds, get rid of the ball on the post route to Jerry Rice. If we do all this stuff correctly, the lineman will convince the defense to take one or two steps forward. The free safety will see the quarterback sacrifice and his turnaround and his fake, and he'll take a step or two forward. And if you get rid of the ball at 2.2 seconds, right before the defensive end on your left side hits you at about 2.6 seconds, because we don't block him on run plays, but we'll fool him long enough if he thinks it's a run. You get rid of the ball at 2.2 seconds, hit Jerry in the post, and we all win because it's a touchdown. That play worked, I think, 6 times in, 6 games I played. We had 8 touchdowns to Jerry Rice, and 6 of them were on that type of play. Because the coach laid out the big vision. He told how important every single player was to the play. He explained the sacrifice that each player was making. And then he showed the way that it all synchronized for team success. A lot of people in business don't know what the other guy's job is and why it's important. We don't respect one another's roles, and we don't know how it ties to the big goal. So that's what teamwork is. It's the big vision tied to the little specifics of every person playing their role. And in marriage, in a home, boy, you better give your kids some roles and tell them how important it is that they do their trash job, or they do their bed-making job, or that they help mom with the dishes. Or that we team up to cook this meal, or all of us do our chip in to save money so we have enough money to send you kids to college so someday you can get the career being a graphic designer that you want to, and you can work on the next Star Wars movie. Do you see how you paint the big picture as well as everyone does their part?
Yeah. And it's all in the details, because it sounded like he started with the big picture and then he put every small detail into that play.
Into it. Right on. I mean, another cool thing, on Saturday nights before the games, we'd be in a hotel, and a lot of teams just went over some other plays that they were going to run the next day or watch film with the other team. What Bill did after we'd won or played great the week before is he put a highlight film together of how well we played the weekend before, and he'd narrate it, and the team would be sitting there watching, and he'd show, watch this pull play. Watch this sweep to the right. Look at Guy McIntyre, our left guard. Guy is pulling out incredibly. He gets off the ball. He takes a perfect line. He's sprinting at full speed. He dives out in front of that outside linebacker, puts his head on the correct outside knee of that linebacker, sacrifices himself so we can get Roger Craig around the end. This is a great play by a great professional, a great San Francisco teammate of yours, Guy McIntyre. This is what I expect of you men tomorrow. This is the way to play football. Geez, how do you think Guy is feeling about that highlight being shown, or the coach saying those cool words about him? And how do you think the rest of us are feeling about what we want to do the next day? We all want to be the one on the highlight the next week, so we're like, man, I got to run that play. I got to sacrifice. I got to be on sharp. I got to be sharp with my assignments. Teamwork is motivated by praise. Don't be afraid to praise the great things in your marriage, the great things in your wife, the great things in your husband, the great things in your kid, the great things in people at work. I know they do stuff wrong. If you focus on what they do right, you'll get more of it. If you focus on the stuff they do wrong, you're going to get a dismotivated, disengaged employee who's going to grumble and think that you're picking on them.
Now, if you could capture the dramatic influence of truly great leadership in one word, what would that word be, and how did you gain the vision that any situation could be improved?
Well, you use the word. It's vision. A leader's job is to get inside the hearts and minds of the people that are being led and show them a picture of the future that's better, bigger, and way improved from the present. The author Jonathan Swift said, vision is the art of seeing what's invisible to others. The leader's job is he's got to see how we can all pull together to create a great future. John F. Kennedy, remember he said, America's task in the decade ahead is to go to the moon, land a man on the moon, and return safely. That vision was accomplished, but it rallied an incredible effort by all the scientists and NASA and all the aerospace businesses and government. And it opened up all sorts of technology and pride in America. But he cast the vision for what was invisible to others. Churchill told England that freedom would live if they did their job. He said, we will stand. We will fight them wherever we need to fight them. Democracy will stay alive because of us. And he gave them the courage, the confidence, and the optimism. So leadership is vision. And let's just put a parenthesis behind it and call it optimism. You need to give people an optimistic vision of where they can go if they all sacrifice and do their part to be the great team that accomplishes big things.
Okay. You talked about your father a little bit earlier. You want to explain to us what in the book lift meant?
Well, Dad, Jack Kemp was my dad. He was born in 1935. He was a last-round draft pick, 17th-round draft pick into the NFL. He played 13 years and started at the bottom and got cut, I think, 3 or 4 times before he ended up with the Chargers, and then won 2 championships with the Buffalo Bills. And after that, he ran for Congress and ran Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, ran for Vice President and lost. But he was known wherever he went for encouragement, optimism, vision, and kind of a positive presentation of what people can be and what they can do. After he died, we had his memorial service, and Bill Bennett, one of the cabinet members, along in President Bush's cabinet with my father, came to our house and was telling funny stories about Dad, but he summed things up by saying, well, the great thing about Jack Kemp is this word, lift. Anywhere he went, whatever the issue, whoever the people were, whatever the issue was, Jack Kemp brought lift. He gave people a better vision of themselves and their future. He gave them optimism, he gave them courage, and he gave them ideas that could make the future better. Lift is the idea that life is for transformation. It's for always getting better, taking bad circumstances and improving them. Leave any place that you come to better off after you leave. There's always a solution. Be a part of the solution, not the problem. And that's why lift is optimism. Lift is creative. Lift is entrepreneurial. Lift is motivating. Lift is teamwork. And, whenever I left the house, my dad would say, hey, Jeff, remember, you're a Kemp. Be a leader. He was lifting me to a bigger vision of myself than, oh, no, I'm a teenager trying to go drink a few beers and have fun and be popular. No, he was letting me know, Jeff, you're a Kemp. Be a leader. Carry yourself well. Influence others well. Be a part of the solution.
All right. Now, what were the final words and actions that transpired the day your father passed away?
Well, it was 2008 when we found out that he had cancer. It was melanoma, but it was also metastasized throughout his bones and a number of his organs. It found its way to his brain. And I think he went through treatment only for our sake. We wanted him to fight and try to recover, but there was really no chance of that, and I think he knew it. But he did do the treatment because he loved us and wanted to encourage us. But in May, maybe it was late April, right before he passed away, it was my last trip back to visit him. And each night I'd lay down on his bed with him there at home in Bethesda, and we'd talk. I'd read favorite passages from the Bible to him that he'd asked me to read. And I'd pray for him. And the last night I was going to be in town, I said, Dad, would you pray for me tomorrow night and say a blessing? And I was thinking about, in all through the years of Jewish history, Jewish fathers would say blessings over their children and kind of speak a positive future about their kids. And here I was a grown man, but I asked my dad to pray a blessing. And I don't even know if he remembered that I'd asked that, but The last night I was with him, he's laying there, and his voice is raspy like mine, but really sick and hardly any breath. And these are the words he said: "Dear God, help Jeff remember his talent. Help him remember the force for good that he is in this world. And help us both remember the only thing that matters is thy will be done." And in those few words, that short prayer, my dad did three pretty amazing things. Number one, he said, help Jeff remember his strength. He was basically reminding me of my value. He was calling out my identity. He was saying, you're special. You got gifts and talents, and help Jeff to remember that. And then secondly, he was reminding me of my mission. He said, help Jeff remember the force for good that he is in the world. He was reminding me that my mission is to make life better for other people. I'm supposed to be a leader. I'm supposed to be a servant. I'm supposed to be a solution finder. And then third, help us both remember the only thing that matters is thy will be done. And that was a great reminder that sometimes we get selfish and narrow-focused, and we think whatever we want is the best thing for us. But he was reminding me that now God's in charge. He's loving. He's good. He has a much bigger plan, and we only want his will, not our own little selfish will, to take place. And those are the last words I ever heard from my dad. And I think they're great encouragement for me as a dad to give my kids their identity, to remind them of their mission, use their gifts to bless other people, make the world a better place, and finally remind them, hey, God loves you, and he's got a much better handle on this whole world than we do. So let's look for his will to happen, not our own.
Now, you received a great legacy from your father. Your father was a great man. I mean, more than even a football player. I mean, the stuff he did after his career was even bigger than what he did through just playing a sport. If you had a few minutes to speak with your dad right now, what would you tell him?
That's a great question, Mike. Thanks for the interview, and thanks for the opportunity. First, I'll remind people out there listening, my dad wasn't perfect. He had huge strengths, but you flip the coin over, and there's some pretty big weaknesses too, okay? I don't need to go into those. Many of us haven't had fathers who we would say were great. They were absent, or maybe they didn't pay attention to us even they were around. Maybe they damaged us. There might have been abuse. But you don't know the story behind that, what their dad did to them or didn't do to them. And I think there's incredible value in honoring our fathers and mothers, regardless of how they behaved. It actually helps and blesses us. It sets us free. But in this case, to answer your question, what would I say to Dad? I'd say, Dad, thank you so much for loving me. Thank you so much for telling me that you love me. Thank you so much for hugging me and for kissing me, even after football games when I was embarrassed. Thank you so much for teaching me to throw the football, teaching me to ski. Thanks for coming to all my games. Thank you for taking me into inner cities with you and hanging out in the kitchens of the expensive hotels where you would give $1,000 a plate political speeches, but you were just as interested or more interested to talk to the African-American busboys and waiters and chefs down in the kitchen, because you wanted to remind them that they were a key part of the American team and that they had dignity and that their dream to reach their potential for their family was crucial, and you were always an ambassador for those people's dreams. So thank you for teaching me to, leave the 99 to go after that lost sheep that hadn't gotten as much opportunity as someone else. Dad, thank you for loving my mom and our family, and for the family you built, and the vacations and the time we had together. And thank you for your legacy of optimistic vision that we can all make the future better if we value God, value our country, and invest in other people, because you did that well, Dad. Thank you.
Well, Jeff, it's been an absolute honor to have you on the show today. I know you got a couple websites, too. You want to tell people about them, where they can find some more information about yourself in the book?
Yeah, and my bottom line is not so much information. I want to equip people to thrive. I want to help them recover from tough stuff, turn it into a positive. I want them to be the best leader, the best team builder they can be, the best husband or wife, best father of their kids if they're divorced. There's hope for them to make a great future with their kids. It's harder. So anyway, in the spirit of helping people, if anyone wants help in their marriage or family, if they want to go to a marriage conference or find out about the resources that Family Life has for their parenting, for their marriage, just go to familylife.com, and you'll find all sorts of good stuff, familylife.com. And then I put out a weekly, I call it a videvo. It's like a little video with a short writing that tells people some practical ways that they can make their week a better week and invest in the people around them and build relationships and teamwork. So that thing's called Facing Your Blitz, and they can get to that on my website, which is called facingtheblitz.com. So they can get my book at facingtheblitz.com. They can get the free video. They can get a discussion guide for free. They can download a free chapter of the book. I hope they'll buy the book and buy a bunch of them to give to friends, because it's really a good book to encourage people. Some guys who don't read books will read one on sports. Some people who would never read a marriage book might read one about football and blitzes, and they'll get some good stuff about marriage, family, and relationships in this book and even in the videos.
All right. Once again, Jeff, thanks for coming on the show. Hopefully we can talk again sometime.
Thanks, Mike. Good talking to you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Okay.
All right, guys, you were listening to Jeff Kemp there. Make sure you go check out his www.facingtheblitz website. Make sure you go on Amazon, buy the book. And once again, follow us on the Grueling Truth Facebook page. If I go to Spreaker, you can follow us there. Stitcher. We'll shortly be on iHeartRadio. Remind you to listen to the rest of the shows this week. We've got, of course, the Divisional NFL Pick'em show with myself, former Pro Bowl Pittsburgh Steeler Leon Searcy, former Denver Bronco guard Mark Cooper. We'll have a Bengals weekly show with myself and former Bengal linebacker Joe Kelly. And Thursday night, myself and Matt Andrews-Scavage will have a top 10 divisional playoff games in NFL history. So, once again, check out our sponsors, which will be Gridiron Mode, www.gridironmode.com, RealBengalsFans.com, and SteelbergBox.com. So, for Jeff Kemp, this is Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.